It's 2021. You're speeding down the I-95 in the driver's seat of your 1997 Chevy Silverado, high off a Perk 30, 7 Coronas, and pure adrenaline. Your friend's sitting in the passenger seat with you. All of a sudden, you swerve, hitting a family of 5 and their dog. Right before the cops show up, your friend swaps seats with you to get you out of trouble. You know you're a twisted piece of shit, but your friend's a ride or die and otherwise only does bad things when you manipulate him to do so. Now ask yourself this: is your friend a bad person?
This seems oddly specific.
The tale I just described is a fictional scenario that did not happen, but it's very similar to the events of Mouthwashing, a psychological horror game released in 2024. I had the pleasure of experiencing this game on a live stream recently, and it's been rattling around in my brain for the past couple of weeks. It doesn't help that it's all over now, with my YouTube homepage being flooded with memes, shorts, comic dubs, and of course, the bread and butter of this website, shitty video essays.
Gay shit, bitch!
You guys fuck with the holding the pop filter? You fuck with that? Let me know if you fuck with that in the comments, please. In truth, I had another idea for a video planned for this month that wasn't this, but look man, views have plummeted and I'm a couple stinkers away from getting evicted. I gotta have a slice of that mouth-washing pie. The moral complexities of the story and characters are too thought-provoking to not spend 15 minutes of my time rambling about. Before we get started though, two things. One is that this video very obviously has some major spoilers in it, but in case you somehow didn't pick up on that, here's your chance to bow out now. If you're still planning on staying despite not having played the game, the second thing you should know is that this video deals with some heavier subject matters that I don't normally talk about, which is why I'm trying to get the yucks out now as opposed to later. I just want to give you guys a heads up about that because I'm not one of those YouTubers who uses the words like unalive and sewer slide unless it's like ironic. So you know, yeah, I'm gonna be describing it in full. I'm not cutting any corners here. If you want to skedaddle, I don't blame you in the slightest. I'll see you here next week.
It's getting serious. It's getting serious.
Gray morality. Some love it, some hate it. I like it when it's done well. Some of my favorite stories use morally gray characters to great effect, and Mouthwashing is of no exception. Every character in this story has flaws, weaknesses, blemishes, and most importantly, complexity. Accomplishing that in a game that takes like 2 hours to beat is a huge accomplishment. Every member of the Tulper feels like a real person, which is why Jimmy works as a particularly great villain. Jimmy isn't a cold, calculating murderer. He's not a Joker, he's not an Anton Chigurh, he's not even a Homelander. Jimmy is a guy who could very easily exist in your life. He's the shady coworker you have that your boss doesn't schedule with the minors. He's that strange guy who kind of smells handing you your Newports at the gas station. Jimmy is terrifying because he feels so real and genuine. Jimmy is a wolf in sheep's clothing. All of his twisted actions are subtly presented to the other characters and the players until the very final moments of the game. The game itself even tries to trick you into thinking he's just an average Joe by having you take control of the narrative through his eyes, at first at least. Throughout the game, his more sinister side begins to unfold as we see Jimmy for what he really is, a manipulating abuser fueled by nothing but his own ego.
So basically, he's just like you.
The fuck? No, I don't have an ego. However, as we, the audience, come to that conclusion, so too does the true protagonist of the story, Curly. The only difference is while we come to that denomination from our comfy gamer chairs with no true stakes in the situation, Curly finally realizes the truth far past the point where it matters. He's forced to sit idly by and do nothing as Jimmy, a man he once called his best friend, slowly undoes everything he's worked towards and kills all of his friends in the process. He can't even speak to try and stop it. Inaction and responsibility are big themes in Mouthwashing, and both are central aspects of Jimmy and Curly. Jimmy has no problem acting, but crumples under the weight of actual responsibility when placed in a position of power. Meanwhile, Curly has the mental fortitude needed to maintain himself with his responsibilities, but lacks the ability to act on things he doesn't view as important. Jimmy is clearly meant to be a bad person who can sometimes make good, in quotes, decisions, albeit sparingly and usually in his own self-interest. But the fandom seems divided on whether or not you can say the opposite for Curly. Many say Curly is just as guilty as Jimmy for enabling his bad behavior, while others say he's a good person who made a few very bad choices. Some say he's neutral, others just don't know. So, what's the truth? Well, let's talk about it. What's happening? It's your boy Dity. Welcome back to Dity Minis, a show where I talk about pieces of media I find kind of interesting. Was Curly a bad person, or was he a good person that made bad decisions? The crux of this question and any argument about Curly comes down to his one fatal decision, or lack thereof. That being his failure to reprimand, punish, or subdue Jimmy in any way for what he did. After Anya confessed to Curly that she was pregnant with Jimmy's child due to her being assaulted, rather than make an appropriate, logical response, Curly not only failed to chastise and demote Jimmy, but gave him more power in letting him pilot the ship by himself, ultimately culminating in the ship crashing and the subsequent demise of the Pony Express crew. On paper, okay, yeah, this is pretty fucking bad. Like with a lot of things, however, context can vastly change how you view this situation. I, personally, don't think Curly was a bad person, but I can easily see how others view things differently. The lack of authority towards Jimmy is the biggest aspect of Curly's character to the naked eye. Sure, there are smaller things like dialogue exchanges, internal monologues, and general hearsay that paint a fuller picture of the man, but Curly ultimately is defined by his inaction. In that same breath, however, I am moved that instead of portraying this inaction as a moral part of himself, we should instead look at it as a grave mistake. It was a miscalculation, a blunder, a leap in logic, a decision that Curly would come to regret not slowly, but immediately. After the crash leaves him disfigured, as previously mentioned, Curly is left unable to speak, so we don't get to see this remorse spelled out plainly for us, but I think it's made pretty clear that he regrets his choices after Anya's death. He laughs.
Hey, I did it. I have the gun. Stop laughing, you little freak.
This could easily just be misconstrued as him laughing at the absurdity of the situation, but I think it's much more apt to consider this a moment of realization for Curly. He was now locked in a room with a woman who'd opened up to him about her most vulnerable moment, expecting him to do something. And instead, he did nothing. A woman who once looked up to him, a woman who he'd considered a friend as well. Taking the problem into her own hands, Anya poisons herself in front of Curly to kill the baby she was forcibly given, killing herself in the process.
Anya! Oh, Anya. That's not good. You ate too many peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. You got the jelly all over you. What the hell?
Jimmy walks in and doesn't spare any time for Anya's corpse. It affirms to Curly that Jimmy only ever saw her as an object, and he doesn't even care that the bloodied corpse of a pregnant woman is carrying a child that could have been his. Jimmy picks up the gun that Anya hid from him. Curly knows what he's going to do with that gun. There'd be no other reason for him to be taking it, and at that realization, Curly laughs not just at the absurdity of the situation, but the irony of it. That now, in the time where he finally wanted to do something about Jimmy, he couldn't. All he could do was sit back and watch. Just like the day Anya told him she was assaulted. Only this time, he doesn't have a choice. Neither of them did. It's very easy to label Curly as an enabler, but it's easy to forget he's also a victim as well. Jimmy is a textbook manipulator, and we can see this not just with how he treats Curly, but Anya and Daisuke as well. With Anya, he's constantly belittling her accomplishments, her psychic evaluations, and even her very existence. It's a way of holding power over her and making sure she doesn't try to start a mutiny against him for what he's done to her.
I got some... You scared me.
Teehee, did I frighten you? Yes, you did. Oh my goodness. Haha, sorry. Yeah, oh my goodness. Oh wow, Jim, you did it.
Yeah, it wasn't actually all that hard once I figured it out.
Amazing, really?
Sure.
I hate to ask you again, but could you give Curly his painkillers? It makes me so nauseous.
You're not serious. Look, I've entertained your sentimentality up until now, but I'm trying to actually fix things on you. I'm getting us through this. It's find the code scanner, then figure out the door code, then get the axe, chop up the phone, but not too much, and best of all, give Curly his fucking medicine. But I'm bearing it, I have to, because the captain has to take fucking responsibility on this goddamn ship. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. Go make sure Daisuke doesn't choke on his own vomit. No, I'll take care of it, Anya. I always do.
Damn, maybe don't be such a fucking buzzkill, Jimmy.
Meanwhile, his manipulation of the naive and vulnerable Daisuke is much more apparent. He appeals to Daisuke's want of Swansea being proud of him, and convincing him that knocking out Swansea will save Anya.
Now we have a job to finish.
And that vent looks like it's still in one piece. In what? That one! Whoa! Check out those sparks. I hate to imagine how gnarly it looks on the inside.
Could be somewhat collapsed in some places. You could make it through. We need to try it.
Swansea said it's not safe. I know he forgot to tell us about the pod, but he knows, like, everything about this kind of stuff. Maybe we should just wait for him to wake up.
You said you could handle it. Swansea taught you well, right? Time to prove it. He'll be impressed when he wakes up. Proud. He'll understand why we had to do this. Then he can explain it himself.
Ah, damn, that evil conniving dictator! That evil conniving dictator manipulator! Daisuke, don't give in, please!
Everyone's counting on you. Captain's orders.
Yeah, I got this. No, he gave in!
Jimmy's manipulation of Curly, however, is much more subtle.
Hi, Jimmy!
What's up, blood? You can't just make something up for this? It's not like these evils go away whenever we go back.
We'll power through it.
Okay, have you been able to complete your mandated task as co-pilot efficiently and to your fullest capacity? Let's see.
I'll just put good for that one. That's all of them. Done and done. How are things otherwise, off the record?
I like it. We're in control here.
Didn't think you'd ever take to being a freighter pilot as well as you have. Well, with how you struggled back on Earth.
Sure. All I ever hear is how great of a leader you are. Honestly, it's kind of annoying. So what is it? How come it always seems like you're standing on the edge of a bridge with your feet in cement?
Lately, I've just been thinking, is this enough? Should I just stay here because I've been successful at it? A good long-haul freighter captain?
And that's bad?
That's what I'm saying, it's not, but it's terrifying. I think, am I figured out? Is this all I'll ever be? Or do I take the risk and try something new, even if I'm bad at it?
I guess I get it. You reached the highest rung on this ladder, so now you're thinking you might be on the wrong ladder altogether. Still a long way down from the top no matter how you look at it. Well, I'm still climbing and climbing.
Something like that. But hey, you know I believe in you. Here, on Earth. Doesn't matter.
You should write that on the psyche eval.
Jimmy, there's ominous music playing. I have a feeling I'm going to get a warped sense of your twisted psyche. Jim, I can fix this.
What do you think will happen when we get back?
We can figure all of this out. You and me.
All I ever hear is how fucking great of a leader you are. God, it's so annoying. But now, what do you think will happen now when we get back?
We'll fix this together.
Everything you and I worked for in our lives, accomplishments, changes, none of it will matter.
You've gotten through difficult situations before. This time won't be any different. Work through it one day at a time.
It's not just me, is it? You're supposed to be the one who had everything under control. You said so yourself. This ship, this crew, everything that happened here. This was your responsibility, Captain. That is what you'll be hearing the rest of your life. Or this can all be remembered as a tragedy, despite what must have been the best efforts of its acclaimed captain. The Tulper crew was never found. No one survived to tell the tale. You're standing at the top, feet in cement. I get it now, right? Right. And then they smooch. I'll take care of it.
I'll admit most of this is conjecture, but it's totally within the realm of possibility with what we've seen Jimmy do. I don't think, unlike the others, that Jimmy was solely using Curly. I think there was some semblance of a friendship there, as Jimmy does feel regret at the thought of Curly being viewed as the villain by whoever stumbles upon the tulper. I also think if there wasn't a bridge of friendship there, Curly would have probably picked up on it way earlier. However, I'd be lying if Jimmy wasn't trying to weasel his way out of taking responsibility for what he did to Anya by pinning the blame on Curly for not keeping him in line.
What?
What? Insane statement for a rapist to make.
It may not mean nothing to y'all.
Jimmy guilt trips, he lies, he gaslights, and he love bombs to get his way with Curly and to get on his good side. Dissimilar to the Pony Express crew, we're to assume Curly and Jimmy have known each other for years prior to this voyage as well. Curly was blind to this abuse because it was subtle and over the course of his life, rather than in a few short months. Put yourself in Curly's shoes for a moment. You're the captain of a huge shipping vessel 100 light years from your home. You're responsible for managing a crew and having their needs met, piloting a giant hunk of metal that can barely be considered a ship with how cheaply it was built, where one mistake will cost you and your crew's life, and making sure your cargo is getting delivered on time. You just discover that you're getting laid off, and you're not sure where your life is going to head past this delivery. You've got a full year left in your voyage, and you're just trying to make sure everyone has their heads still on tight. Then, on top of all that, you get told by someone you trust, someone you confided in, that your best friend, who in your mind has had your back since day one, raped them. Now, some of you in the audience might immediately jump to the conclusion that you'd cut ties with your friend, chop their head off with an axe, and go about your life. But let's be realistic here. It'd be hard for anyone to just do that. Maybe some of the more headstrong among you can make that decision in a timely fashion and save the other crew members, and kudos to you, but I know for a fact that I'd hesitate. And that's exactly what I think Curly was doing. Hesitating. Curly's initial words to Jimmy might seem like he immediately went to side with him over Anya, saying he'll find a way to fix it, but I personally choose to believe that Curly was still mixed about the situation. I think he was just buying time, trying to find the words to keep Jimmy at bay in case, he snaps. It was only after Jimmy started using his usual gaslighting campaign that he got inside Curly's head and made him complacent again, if only for a brief moment. It was in that complacency that he let Jimmy take charge, only for him to ruin everything. Now, make absolutely no mistake here, I'm not trying to convince you that what Curly did here was good, I'm just saying it doesn't make him evil. Yet, in spite of my argument, it would seem the game itself would disagree with me, as a recurring theme in Mouthwashing is the idea of our worst moments, defining us. A few days before the crash, there's a cutscene in which Anya and Curly discuss the artificial moonlight spread out on a large display board in the lobby.
Gosh. Oh, we're Curly again. You doing okay?
Yeah, can't sleep.
I know how that is. I just toss and turn. Or stare at the ceiling all night.
I actually kind of like the nighttime window screen, if you can believe it. So I just come look at it sometimes. If you look really, really close, you can see there's a dead pixel in the upper right corner.
That's so. Nope, don't see it.
In the back of my mind, it's always there.
Now I'll go bonkers looking for it. Cheers. I don't think it ruins the illusion, though. It's peaceful. But maybe I'm just used to looking at the bigger picture.
How many days of transport do we have left?
Let's see. Off the top of my head, around 237 days. Just under
8 months. Hey, why do you think Pony Express put a lock on the medical room door but not in the sleeping quarters?
I suppose it's for the same reason they put a lock on the cockpit. Safety.
Curly doesn't happen to see anything wrong with it, but Anya notices a dead pixel in the upper right-hand corner of the screen, and every time she looks at the board, she can't help but notice it. The display is meant to represent Jimmy, and how Anya will only ever notice Jimmy's dead pixel, the dead pixel in this case being the time he assaulted her. We see through Curly's eyes, however, that there is no dead pixel. Curly can't see it. We can't see it. So, what does this mean? Is Anya just tripping? A popular fan interpretation is that the reason why Curly never notices the pixel is because the board solely represents Jimmy, and how his bad deed went unnoticed by Curly, thus he overlooks it. I happen to think that this board could also be a representation of how the crew views themselves. Anya's dead pixel is her vulnerability. She sees herself as weak and unable to stand up to Jimmy, her abuser. That's all she can think about. It was only upon her standing up to Jimmy that she realizes her fear of Jimmy gets the better of her, and she lets her own hatred of him consume her, ending her own life in the process. However, at the same time, Curly's dead pixel had yet to be shown, as he was never aware of his own flaws. His dead pixel was letting Jimmy off the hook. I think rather than telling us, the audience, that our worst moments define us definitively, instead, the game is posing the question itself to the viewer. Do our worst moments define us? Conveniently, a lot of people seem to forget that Anya, while also being a victim, endangered not only Curly's life, but everyone on boards by harboring all the medicine to herself and locking her dead corpse within the medicinal supplies office. Yet, people don't ever seem to bring this up when talking about her. It's always that she was this innocent being who got taken advantage of and did nothing wrong. And you know what? I'm on their side for the most part.
Oh, so it was a joke.
Saying this, the viewer casually threw aside a large rock.
Anya made a huge mistake in endangering the lives of the crew, but I don't think that this moment defines her at all. She was sweet, she was kind, and she cared for everyone on board, even Jimmy in a fucked up sort of way. She only made the decision of harboring the medicine because she was pushed to the absolute breaking point. Does this sound familiar to anybody else? Now, obviously, the circumstances are very different. I just find it a bit hypocritical that there's a subsect of the community that praises Anya for her being moral and nothing but a victim, while simultaneously Curly is often put on the same level as Jimmy. Curly not only made a mistake, but unlike Anya, it's a mistake that will forever haunt him. Say what you will about what happened to Anya, it was horrible and she shouldn't have gone through it, but at least she didn't have to live with the consequences of what she did via her own volition. Curly did, possibly for over 20 years by himself, cryogenically frozen with nothing but his thoughts, his regrets, and his agony. All this to say, if you're going to call Anya a victim and nothing but a victim, I hope you extend that sentiment to Curly as well. Now, this isn't to say that Curly did nothing wrong either, far from it. Him not reprimanding Jimmy is ultimately what led to the fall of the Tulper. The decision he made and the side he took was wrong, that's just a fact. I'm just arguing against the point that this seemingly character-defining lack of a decision makes him a bad person overall. I think instead of viewing things in such a black and white way, the story of Jimmy and Curly should be a cautionary tale of negligence, and how otherwise good people can become twisted versions of themselves under the influence of monsters who we might consider friends. Curly's fate is befitting of being called a Greek tragedy. He gets laid off, he fails to prevent the rape of one of his subordinates with his best friend being responsible. He lets said friend pilot the ship and crash it. He takes the fall for him and ends up mutilated and disfigured. He's unable to even talk or move. Every inch of his skin burns to the touch of the air around him like mouthwash on his tongue. He has to watch as the rapist he defended goes and somehow manages to make everything even worse than it was before, killing off his crewmates one by one until Curly was the only one remaining. Then, on top of all of that, he's forced to eat his own leg for some reason, and he's shoved into a space pod that'll freeze him over 20 years with no guarantee that he'll even be found. All he can do in that cryo chamber is sit in both physical and mental agony. because Curly refused to act when it counted. He was cursed to a state of inaction for seemingly the rest of his life. It's a brutal punishment, but a fitting one. Sometimes taking responsibility hurts. This was life's way of having Curly repent for his sin, because without a staunch punishment, he likely never would have truly understood the gravity of the situation. Sure, he probably knew in the back of his head that what he did was wrong, but in Curly's mind, it was likely something he could wish away in the process of getting things back to quote-unquote how they normally were. What Curly failed to understand is that there was no going back after Jimmy assaulted Anya. From that point forward, Jimmy threw everything away. There was no more happy ending in sight. You can't fix what is beyond repair. Curly is a utilitarian. He looked for the best possible outcome for everyone on board, even if that means defending his rapist best friend. He was too forgiving and failed to see the bad in Jimmy before it was too late. I don't think those are the traits, flaws, and mannerisms of someone who's truly a bad person. I think it's an otherwise good, hardworking, caring person who made a very bad decision under mounds of stress. They say the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and I can't think of a more fitting character to represent that statement than Curly. Ladders.
What the hell is even that?
I think what makes Mouthwashing so captivating as a game is that despite its short runtime, it can manage to make something so divisive that I can honestly see both sides of this argument being correct. In all my time making episodes of Dity Minis, Dity Ditties, and even just stuff before I made Commodity, I haven't talked about a topic I can say that about yet. So let me know your opinions in the comments section. Do you think I cooked, or do you think my opinion was straight up dog shit? I read every single one, so unless this video seriously blows up, I promise I'll read what you have to say.
Also, if you could hit the like button so that the algorithms can scoop this video up, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, that's pretty much it. Have yourself a damn good one.
Freeze, dirtbag! You're under arrest for running over a family of 5 and their dog in your 1997 Chevy Silverado.
It was one time!
It's Diddy, bitch! And you know we run the city, bitch! How much I gotta pay?